arms towards the sun. You feel the warmth of the rays, and then you know you're alive and you don't have to be afraid.
Welcome to the Bassline. Helena Krizek lost her daughter at a horrific medical kidnapping. She is also an experienced nurse who worked in the COVID ward in a New York City hospital during the peak of the COVID event. She retired specifically to avoid the killer vaccines. Fascinating and insightful, with an unbelievably tragic story to talk, we have the courageous Helena Krizek. Welcome to the Bassline, Helena. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Jeremiah.
But I just wanted to say that Helena is a friend of mine. So, I'm very honored to have a friend who has a vast amount of experience here. She has a very tragic story to tell, like I said. And she was a COVID nurse who saw things right there up close and personal while this whole event was happening. So I'm very interested in her perspective, what she has experienced, what she has learned. I'm sure the audience is going to gain tremendous insight through this discussion. And of course, this is a listener-sponsored program on the Progressive Radio Network. So the way to support this program is you can go to my website, jeremiahhosea.com, buy the theme song for $1. That would be greatly appreciated. If 1 million people bought the song for $1, I could be a millionaire and invest my money in medical freedom and other good causes.
Yeah.
But also, please subscribe to my Substack. I've been writing consistently. I've grown in my subscribers. I have over 2,000 subscribers now, and I would love for you to check out the articles I've written. Please become a free subscriber if you can't become a paid subscriber, but if you can, I greatly appreciate a paid subscription to my Substack. It is the wind beneath my wings, so to speak. And then also a quick announcement about our next 528 frequency event. We're going to have another 528 frequency jam in Harlem on Sunday, April 27th. And the address is 275 Lenox Avenue. The doors open at 3:30 p.m. Suggested price of admission is $10. And we are jamming in the 528 frequency. My brother and former guest of this program, Kevin Nathaniel, is going to be on mbira and percussion. We have our brother Hassan on percussion, who's another member of the Spirit Ensemble with Kevin, who I've also performed with, legendary group called Spirit Ensemble. And it's going to be another great 528 event. So please join us over there. That's a great way to meet other medical freedom folks, other listeners to the Bassline radio program, and to get uplifted with some rhythm and some sound and some self-expression and some improvisation. So please support this program. It really means a lot to me. I do have 2 young children, and the more you support, the more free I am to do this work in the economically hostile environment that is New York City. But Helena, it's so great to talk with you today. I'm so glad you're joining me. And the first thing I want to ask you about is your experience as a nurse during COVID. I mean, just tell us some of the things that you witnessed. Tell us some of the things that stand out to you. You didn't catch COVID, if I'm not mistaken, even though you were exposed to many, many COVID patients, if that's correct.
Yes.
Tell us about your experience as a nurse in New York City, please.
So my experience, I work with COVID patients for about 6 months. I have left the hospital in mid of 2020. And all the patients apparently were COVID patients during that time. What has struck me right at the very beginning, in January of 2020, that suddenly within 1 week, everybody had a disease globally. I could not understand how such an infection can spread globally within 1 week. As a nurse, it did not make sense to me to begin with. Then the lockdowns came. We as nurses, we would always isolate the infected patients, not the healthy patients. So that was another turnoff for me. That was a red flag. That's when I start seeing that there is something seriously wrong. I did not believe any of that. So then I was looking at some video of Dr. Cameron Kyle Siddell. I am not sure if you are familiar with him, but he said that this is not a respiratory disease. This is a disease which reflects a high altitude. And we could see that when they were showing initially all those videos from China already in December of 2019, and the people were dropping suddenly dead. The people don't drop dead from respiratory disease, or crash right on the street. It happens, there has to be some other problem. Then in the spring of 2020, we had to, I used to work oncology. We had to flow throughout the whole hospital. So I was asked, what unit do you want to float to? So I said, I'll float ICU. I did that before, so I float ICU. So in ICU, we had to do like preparatory course one night for ICU. The two subjects were reviewed, ventilators and the sedatives. Ventilators has two functions. It's a volume and the pressure. Pressure was always set up at 5. And at this course, we were instructed that the pressure will be set up at number 12. Pressure is labeled under PEEP, partial and expiratory pressure. And pressure if you set it up at number 12, you immediately will cause the damage to the lung. You will damage all the alveoli, those little sacs in the lungs, and the lungs will flood with the blood. Therefore, the exchange of the oxygen and carbon dioxide will be disturbed, and the patient will go into hypoxia. If you add to this patient, instead of 1 or 2 sedative drips, you put them on 4 or 5 different sedative drips, you have a recipe for disaster. Because what happens, ammonia levels will increase, and the patient will get into seizure, into coma, and the death. This is what was actually happening. Many people do not understand this recipe, but that's what was actually happening. This was the first time I got into mild confrontation with the educator. So that's what was happening. Then at the end of March, beginning of April, DNR status, which means do not resuscitate. I was trying to understand, trying to find out where the order came from for this status. I have never gotten any answer. Then what was happening also, what struck me, the change in the labeling of diagnosis from coronavirus to corona to COVID. For one diagnosis, we have 3 different labels. I also understood that the hospitals were receiving large monetary incentives for a diagnosis. If the patient would come to the hospital, let's say they would have rash, they would, and you put on their record diagnosis of COVID, there was right over $30,000. Then if you would ventilate them, money were adding to it. If they died and you on their death certificate would be that they died of COVID as a primary cause of death, then there would be again monetary incentive for the hospitals, and so on. A few days ago, what I have found out actually, this is very positive thing. What's happening? The European Court of Justice actually is now beginning to hold liable all healthcare professionals who were encouraging or administering these medications, these bioweapons, and they will be held civilly and criminally liable for all this. I think And, why I am against the COVID injections? Well, why am I against the COVID injections?
So hold on before we get into
My
that.
life,
Before we get into
Mhm.
that, Helena, could you explain that you were going to be mandated to take this, and that's when you ended your career? Isn't that true? That you ended your career on account of those mandates?
The injections
Is that
was not
accurate?
at that yet. No, they were not at that point yet.
Okay.
I left in mid 2020. I knew they will
Okay.
be coming, but
Yeah.
they were not at that point yet. No.
Okay. And you were against those from the beginning as well. And what did you know about the injections?
Yes, I am against injections because my last vaccine I have taken over 30 years ago, and it was a hepatitis B. Hepatitis B is given in 3 different shots, and when I had received last shot, I was very ill, and that was for me. I am never ever gonna take any vaccine. We had to take every year in the hospital a flu vaccine. I would decline every year. And about 10, 15 years ago, I don't remember exactly what year was that, there were some nurses actually from Massachusetts who went to Albany. And I think there were some nurses from New York also. And they were protesting against this that we have to take the shots. So we ended up after that, we have to wear the mask during the season from end of October until March. We were required, you would sign up that you're declining the vaccine, and you had to wear the mask, which was fine with me.
So this was mask wearing before the whole COVID mask
Yes,
regime?
that that was
And
already for
and
a
and this
decade.
was claiming that the regular surgical mask was an air filtration system, basically?
Yes, we had to do it in the hospital. Who declined the vaccine had to wear the mask for the season from end of October until like March. Yeah. So that mask was not new for me. I was already used to it.
How many
So
years of
when it
that continued? How many
that
how
was
many years of
that was probably
had it been going on?
almost 10 years prior COVID came.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Like I would say maybe 8 to 10 years, like that. Yeah. We had to wear the mask for the season. If you decline, that's why
Did you
everybody.
ever notice adverse reactions to the flu shots by your colleagues? Did you ever see people
Uh,
possibly being
I,
harmed by the flu shots?
I don't remember. I don't remember ever anybody having an issue, but I would not take the flu shot because I again try to reason. They would CDC would say we will select the 4 most important strains of flu. We have over
Yeah.
150 plus strains of flu. So they're gonna select any minimal four strains, and they're gonna make
Hmm.
the vaccine. Impossible. So I said, no, I'm not taking that. It's not gonna work with
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So I haven't had a vaccine for way over 30 years. And then
Thankfully.
I got to know Dr. Horowitz and his girlfriend Sherry, and also Bellingers from Tennessee. And they are also anti-vaxxers. And I was kind of learning more and more about the vaccines and doing lots of my own research. And yeah, I would never take it. Another problem with
So
vaccines,
I
what
want to
I don't
actually,
like it, even in the flu vaccine, why it's the additives. Yeah, different additives to vaccine like mercury, formaldehyde. We use formaldehyde to preserve dead tissue, in the laboratories. That's the chemical. It's a poisonous chemical.
hmm
Then aluminum, then dog cells. Why do we need dog cells in our body? It's my
hmm
question.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
well, I
So
want
those,
to, this is a good give credit where credit is due moment. I have to say, I meant to mention at the top of the program, but I'll mention now that Helena has contributed greatly to the Bassline in that she has connected me with outstanding guests, excuse me, including Dr. Leonard Horowitz, who you mentioned, and also the incredible and outstanding Dr. Paul Byrne. So I want to thank you personally for Helen, for introducing me to those gentlemen, Helena. And we just had a great Twitter space the other night with Dr. Horowitz. He's the one who introduced me to the 528 frequency concept and the healing powers of the 528 frequency. And Dr. Byrne also, truly outstanding individual. I don't remember offhand which episode of the Bassline that was, but please scroll back through the archives and listen to that very important interview I did with him where he debunks another myth, which is the notion of brain death, that we have this notion that someone could be brain dead, and that's yet another myth, which we're going to discuss a little bit more in a moment. But I would like to ask you, and this is just a very difficult situation. I mean, beyond difficult, it's the most painful thing I can imagine, the experience that you've gone through losing your daughter. And you're very courageous to speak out about this. And the community should really be aware of this incredible crime that you've experienced. And we need to understand what's happening in these hospitals, which my friend Dr. Ben Marble calls the hellspitals. And
Yes.
this experience that you're about to explain to us epitomizes that phrase more than anything I've ever heard. So take your time and please tell us about this unbelievably tragic thing that you experienced with the loss of your daughter.
So I'm gonna start. So my daughter, she was like, she moved to Hawaii in 2012. Before she was living here in New York, she was a fashion model and she studied at Boston University and so on. In 2012, she moves to Hawaii, and in 2015, she in the fall, she develops a redness to her left lower leg, like maybe, I don't know, size of this grapefruit or small melon or whatever. It was a rash. So she goes to walk-in clinic and she gets Bactrim and Kiflex, which are both antibiotics prescribed. And she takes them alternatively. I don't know which one was first. And then they also put her on diflucan, which is antifungal medicine. And none of those three medicine would work because she would vomit them. And so if you vomit, there is no absorption of the medicine in your stomach, and she got dehydrated. So on December 28, 2015, her roommate calls ambulance and she's transported to Queens Medical Center. She was fully alert, oriented. I had an excellent conversation with her while she was in emergency room. And they kept her in emergency room for 9.5 hours, which is never done if you plan to transfer the patient into ICU. Then as they assigned diagnosis of sepsis, which was later on ruled out by the medical expert. She never had that, and she never was even treated for sepsis. They just needed to assign the diagnosis to bring her into the ICU, where you can actually do what they had planned to do. She was profiled right in the emergency room. She was medically kidnapped because there was no admission consent signed by her. There is nowhere admission consent within her medical record. And she was drugged the following day while she was in ICU. She had a conversation with her dad. Her dad called her and they spoke, and then she started apparently crying, and she said, I am scared. She must have had somebody must have said something in front of her, and they start drugging her with fentanyl. Nurse assesses her at 8 o'clock in the morning and asks her questions. Do you have a pain? My daughter said, no, I don't have a pain. Her blood pressure was low due to dehydration. And 22 minutes, she started injecting her with fentanyl. When that nurse was asked during the deposition, why were you injecting this fentanyl into the patient who has a low blood pressure due to dehydration and is telling you, I have no pain? The nurse's response was, I don't know. She did not know. Then at lunchtime, she started injecting her with Ativan, a high dose of Ativan also. Those two medications were also two medications which were given to the patients during COVID. By afternoon, my daughter was so drugged that she was not able to direct her care anymore. And even though her friend, her roommate came to visit her, she still was carrying the communication with him. And he said, okay, I'll come next day to visit you. When he came next day, she was already intubated and on the ventilator. What they were doing the very same day, they were doing the test on her, completely unrelated test. They were testing her for HIV, syphilis, hepatitis B. Those are the tests which we do when we want to match for the organ harvesting. Those tests was completely unrelated to her care. And so they intubated her. There were discrepancy in her intubation. The doctor comes to the nurse whom we had deposed, and she said when lawyer asked her what kind of intubation was that, and she answered, this was an elective intubation. And the doctor documented that it was an emergent intubation. It was not the emergent intubation because he tells the nurse, I will come in about an hour and I will intubate this patient, meaning Bianca. This is not emergent intubation. If we emergently intubate somebody, it has to happen here and now. And besides, we do not electively intubating patients in ICU. The patients are emergently intubated in ICU. She was not the ICU patient. She could have been in general med surg. She could have been easily rehydrated in the general med surgical floor. She did not need it to be transported to ICU. They got her into ICU under the fraudulent diagnosis of sepsis, which was later on ruled out. She had no fever. All her microbiology throughout the whole admission was negative. And so going back to intubation, so he intubates her and they remove her from ICU 22 minutes later after intubation and transporting her to radiology for a routine test. Patients are never transported for a routine test. And if they have to be transported for emergent tests, there has to be a team to accompany there. There has to be a nurse to monitor the medications. There has to be a respiratory therapist to monitor the ventilator, portable ventilator. And there has to be an MD in case the patient crashes during the transport. There was nothing of that. That transport is never documented in her record. The nurse had lied during the deposition that she went with her, that she was the one who accompanied her. When attorney asked her, so who was the other person who accompanied her along with you? Well, it was he. She would not give us the name, which then we found later on in the audit trail, which I don't know if you are familiar with the audit trails and metadata of all the documentations. We look back and we find that nurse was never with her. Meanwhile, she was on the 4th floor on the computer doing something on the computer while my daughter was in basement or 1st floor in the radiology department. So they let intubated patient to go, I don't know, maybe with the escort. To this day, we don't know who accompanied her. When they intubated her, they gave her etomidate, which is the medication we use during the intubation, which has very short life. It's out of your body within 15 minutes. Then they also gave her rocuronium, which is the paralytic agent. and they gave her a Versed. Versed is the medication which paralyzes your diaphragm. So it actually, you have difficulty to breathe. And then on top, she had rocuronium, which paralyzes you completely. And she was not given sedation agent. She was not on sedation drip at that point. So she was paralyzed, and they removed her from the ICU. She is not accompanied by the team. There is nowhere documentation in her record. And then they bring her back in the hour, and she was in the coma. She was unresponsive because what was done to her was done outside the unit, so nobody sees what was done. They bring her back, and the nurse, who was her nurse who did the assessment at 8 p.m. and documented that the patient was confused, but she has a clear speech and everything. She sees now the patient is in the coma and has no sedation drip. The patient can go in the coma only for two reasons, either brain injury or sedation drip. There is no any other way the patient will be in the coma. There was no sedation drip, so she sustained a brain injury while she was removed from the unit unaccompanied. Now I am looking back into a radiology technician, which I am possibly considering to bring him or to have him deposed in this new lawsuit. Because if he works in radiology, if I am working in radiology and they bring me a patient from ICU with portable ventilator and there is no team to accompany this patient, I have to call administrator, hospital administrator, emergency. This is my duty to call emergently hospital administration. What am I gonna do with this patient? I am not qualified to take care of ICU patients in radiology department. But this was all the setup. They brought my daughter back from that radiology. Now she's in the coma, she's unresponsive. So nurse is panicking, obviously. She never went with her. She lied during the deposition afterwards when we were in the lawsuit. She takes her 8 p.m. assessment and she's copying it forward to midnight. And it looks now that the patient has a clear speech, but the patient is intubated. You don't know what speech patient has. Patient is in the coma and you saying the patient is confused. You don't know if patient is confused. Patient is in the coma, unresponsive. She leaves the shift at 3 a.m. because she most likely panicked. Another nurse comes at 3 a.m. and she's the first one who documents at 4 a.m. that she received a patient who is in the coma, unresponsive, and she's unable to assess the patient. There was nothing done. If we have a patient, if this happens, obviously this did not happen, this was deliberately done to my daughter, that's now obvious. But if this happened, there has to be immediately neurologist on call. There has to be immediate CT scan, MRI scan. This is a major emergency. If the patient has no sedation drip on board and suddenly become comatose, we have a problem. What happened? And only comatose you can become because you become hypoxic, you become anoxic, you have some kind of disturbance in the oxygen delivery. We don't know for how long she was without the oxygen. We don't know. And then later on, what I find out now actually with this next lawsuit, Legacy of Life have now finally admitted that the hospital had offered my daughter's body for transplantation purposes. And that's why this was done. It is very difficult to talk about it, especially now when they are kind of admitting what was done, before I could talk about it easier. It was much easier for me to talk about it. Now it's actually very painful. And I believe this is done to so many people. And many families do not even know. This started in late 60s, and many families don't even have idea what happens. Because they are persuaded, or your family member, your sister, your brother, your child was very ill. I have never gotten any explanation from them. Everything was, it's critical. When I came and asked them what has happened, it's critical. That was only explanation what they gave me. There is much, much more to this case. Also, when I filed the first lawsuit, within months or 2 months, or around that lawsuit filing time, CEO of the hospital resigns. CEO of Legacy of Life resigns, which is the organization for organ donation in Hawaii. A director of Department of Health resigned. I had going on with her too. I thought if I push it through, I asked the Department of Health, can you please do investigation survey into my daughter's death? I am concerned primarily about those two medications given to her, fentanyl and Ativan. They staged the survey. They have never performed the survey. And so I told the director of Department of Health, I told her, you are complicit. You are a criminal too, because you are part of this, whatever is happening here, and you are complicit. And instead of, I was hoping that she's gonna press the charges against me at that point, and it never happened. Instead, she resigns. Medical examiner also resigns. Director of the clinic, walking clinic where Bianca was going, he also resigns. He's jumping from Hawaii. When I was looking at her medical record from the clinic, my daughter started going there in 2013. In 2013, she was taken care of by physician assistant. Her care was perfectly normal. 2014, she was taken care of by nurse practitioner. Care was fine. In 2015, the care has majorly changed. She was taken care of by this physician who was also the director of the clinic called Ahora Payam, and the care became bizarre. He started prescribing all kinds of crazy medications for her. I would tell many times to my daughter, do not even touch it. And then when I was searching who this person is, he was not only a director of the clinic, he was also the internist in the hospital I am suing. So he must have been profiling these patients outside in the clinic, because the clinic had lots of people going there, like tourists, young people who come to Hawaii to serve, homeless people, and who knows? So he left the clinic immediately after I filed the lawsuit, within the months or so, resigned, and went to Nevada. Now we found him in California. He's kind of cruising around. The nurse we were deposing, who was Bianca's nurse, who was with her during the incubation and who never went with her to the radiology, who was lying, she immediately left and went to Hawaii. She canceled the deposition about 4 or 5 times. We finally got her in California. We were able to depose her, but obviously she was lying throughout the deposition. She said she went with my daughter, but then we find differently from the audit trail. That's not true. She was on the 4th floor. My daughter was on the 1st floor in the radiology. And when the lawyer asked her, so what kind of test they did for Bianca, since you were a nurse, you are critical care nurse, you were accompanying your only patient, what kind of test they have done for her? It was a CT of head, which is not true. They did the CT of her left ankle, abdomen, and pelvis, completely unnecessary, completely unrelated.
Wow. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear all of this.
There is so much to this case, and it's so much lying. But now with this second lawsuit, what I have filed, and also during the lawsuit, what has happened, my attorneys have sold me, obviously. I don't know why, if they were threatened or bribed, maybe both. I will never know, even though we have brought them back as a defendants now. I have filed for motion for a new trial right after this first trial. What has happened during the trial? I had three defendants, three doctors, and one of the doctors, they let him go from the second day of trial. And I cannot say why. They said why, but they never provided me with the health certificate. And that was something what I was demanding from my lawyers. I need a health certificate. Why are you letting him go? Jury never find out who he was. They never find out why he was let go. And then all the documents are sealed still. They don't want to unseal the documents.
So where do you stand at this current moment legally? What's the next step for you?
Legally, I have filed new lawsuit against violation of my civil rights. And now I will be going for the hearing. This is an initial hearing, which will be like in July, end of June, beginning of July. I have like 13 defendants, including my attorneys and her law firm. Because, if you accusing somebody from something like that, which I have evidence now, because in the motion, which was written by Legacy of Life attorney, the new CEO of Legacy of Life organ donation place, he had attested now in this motion that the Legacy of Life was offered my daughter's body for transplantation. And that was happening very first day when they were drugging her. When they were doing those tests, you never bring the patient who is dehydrated and needs maybe antibiotic to the ICU. Secondly, you never leave the patient for 9.5 hours hanging in parked in emergency room. There is a policy and procedure that patients who will go to ICU have to be transported within 2 hours. They have to be within 2 hours in ICU setting. She was parked in 9.5 hours in emergency room. When we were deposing emergency room doctor, and my lawyer asked him after, do you know that after 5 hours, she was still parked in emergency room? He said, I don't know. So this is your critical patient, and whom you're planning to send to ICU, and you don't know that your patient is parked there for so many hours. It's like,
yeah, unbelievable.
I believe this organ harvesting, it's really deadly. I was attending 2 conferences. I had to do it online because of the COVID. Dr. Byrne was presenting in both conferences. One was in Rome and one was in Paris. And during the second conference in Paris, there was an Italian journalist, and he made a really, really good statement that the organ harvesting is the precedent of COVID. Yes, it is. Because if you can easily trick people to do something like that, then you can easily trick them into anything.
Yeah.
It's just another form of lie. It's just another lie.
Yeah, I'm so upset that this has happened to you, my friend, and I'm so upset that this is happening in general. But I'm so glad that you brought this horrific truth to my attention and to the world's attention. And initially, I have to say, when you directed me to Dr. Paul Byrne, it felt like a little bit of a stretch outside of the COVID conversation. But then as he started to explain what's happening with this organ harvesting and this
Yeah.
terrible practice that's continuing to go on, the connection became more and more clear. And
Yes.
I do challenge my audience, who is hopefully already aware about the dangers of injections that some people choose to call vaccines. But we now need to add to the list, if you aren't already aware of this, and by the way, that is Bassline episode 29 with Dr. Paul Byrne. Please go back and
Yeah.
revisit it. He is a foremost authority on this subject, and it's quite incredible to understand that brain death is a myth. Either you are alive or you are dead. You can't be dead and breathing.
Yes.
And the
And
notion of, yeah, go ahead.
I have actually found something. This is very interesting. I am going to open it. I just want to read it because it's only one state in the US does not agree with this brain death, and that is New Jersey.
Oh,
New Jersey is the only state that allows declaration of death solely on cardiopulmonary criteria. So it's not the brain death. There, a patient may not be declared dead legally, even while they are meeting brain death criteria medically. It's only cardiopulmonary death. It's the only state which is with the program.
right.
Even though those things probably happen there too, they easily persuade the family, and really, if you don't know, it's very difficult to find out. It took me time to figure it out, everything, to study that record and to figure it out.
Right. Well, someone who's had your experience, both the tragic experience with your daughter and then your experience as a nurse in New York City, you would have as much insight as anybody, I would say, in terms of some of the changes that should be implemented into our healthcare system, which is decreasingly based on health whatsoever. And the care is mostly gone. So it's a double misnomer. There's not a lot of health and there's not a lot of care in general going on, it seems. But what would be some of the, of course, we have limited time here. We're nearing the end of the program, but I would love for you to give us some insight into major changes that you would make if you were given political power today and you were told, what are you going to change about hospitals? What are some of the things that we need to change, things that are just simply being done in a wrong way, and they're continuing to be done in a wrong way? What are some of those things that you would highlight first of all?
I would change two things, actually. The nurses used to be a hospital administrator until 1973. When Richard Nixon established HMO Act, that has changed. The nurses are not hospital administrators no more, very rarely. And only business people or physicians with business degree, because there is a profit. They become for-profit organizations, even though they call them non-profit, which is wrong. It's very much for-profit. And this has to all reverse. Really, nurses have no really intention of money, really. The hospitals were run just well by nurses before. And this would be one of my things. Another thing that the people don't know about Hippocratic Oath, they don't know too much. They think that doctors still do not have that, do not harm. No, that's another thing which was canceled in 1973. So the physicians actually are not responsible. They won't, even though they would take the oath, there will be no direct punishment to them. So that was the time when harvesting kind of started in those days, and the abortions and everything what they do, they can harm because they never took the oath. I'm not going to harm.
Right.
This was very well set up.
Hmm. Yeah, we need to go back and review that 1973 act. It seems like a very
Even
important.
I was looking even in Hawaii, you know, and this is the largest hospital there, right? There is one small hospital, and it's actually run by two nurses from California.
Hmm.
And where do you think the rich people go from Hawaii? To that
California, I
hospital.
gather.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's where they go. That's only for rich people. So why do rich people go to the hospital which is run by nurses? Why don't they go to this large hospital there,
Yeah,
which is run by
good
business
question.
person?
Yeah, good question. Wow. So
Mhm.
another thing, I guess, I would love to hear from you, kind of circling back around to the beginning of the conversation, since we have a few minutes here left, thankfully. What are your thoughts about the COVID disease itself? Because you mentioned, and I've written about this, I call it the three-card Monty of you're referring to it as coronavirus, COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2,
Yeah.
and the sort of playing around with the names in reference to apparently the same thing. It reminds me
Mhm.
of when ISIS became the leading terror threat in the world, and you would
Yeah.
have representatives of the government going to the podium, and they would randomly refer to ISIS as either ISIS or ISIL without
Okay.
making any distinction of
This-
what they were referring to. It seemed that
Yeah.
they were referring to the same thing, but they would arbitrarily use a different acronym. One meant the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, and the other meant the
Mhm.
Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant.
Yes.
And so, there's also, I mean, there's the feature of the PCR test being fraudulently used
Yes.
between the asymptomatic cases.
Mhm.
There's the multiple comorbidities where
Mhm.
someone per se died of whatever that was really killing them for a period
Mhm.
of time. And then we say, oh, they were
Yeah.
COVID death. There was all these
Yeah.
things that were done to sort of cook the books. And then there was even people, without respiratory symptoms whatsoever testing
Mhm.
positive for COVID. They just didn't feel well. And then we say, oh, you have COVID, but isn't COVID the disease manifestation of the SARS virus, which is severe
Mhm.
acute respiratory syndrome? So you mean to say you have severe acute respiratory syndrome and no respiratory symptoms? So
Mhm. Yeah.
what do you say about when you were seeing all of these COVID patients, what are your thoughts on what the COVID disease actually was?
My thought was, you know, I was like, they were scared. You know, if you see 24 hours on TV, if you have a sniffles, you have a little cough, or you have a runny nose, runny eyes, you need to come to the hospital because you have a COVID. And that
Right.
was the reason why I was not afraid. I was
Mm.
not afraid. I was not even wearing mask. I was not afraid of these guys at all
Right.
because I know it just was not adding up to me. Many factors was
And
not
and
adding.
and again, you never caught COVID yourself with
No,
direct exposure to. How
no.
many patients in total would you estimate you came in contact with during that period of time?
For okay, so for um 12 times, I'm just kind of maybe like 300 or something.
Right.
Yeah, in that
So in
6 months.
direct contact with hundreds of patients, no mask, which of course is a useless
Mm-hmm.
intervention, anyhow, but you never caught COVID, which I found that fascinating as well. I as well never got COVID.
Yeah,
And I find that to be fascinating too, the total lack of curiosity
yeah, yeah.
surrounding the question of why did some people not get it whatsoever?
Mm-hmm.
There should
Yeah,
be an investigation into that if we're so
yeah.
concerned and we're so vigilant.
I truly believe it was a fraud. It,
Okay.
you know, I was looking if you are familiar with Dr. Ardis, and he
Yeah.
spoke about it that about almost 2 years ago, and he would say that this was caused by the venom of two snakes,
Mhm.
cobra and Chinese crate snake,
Hmm.
and that's why Dr. Sidel was comparing it to like atmospheric disease, that the people were dropping without having any respiratory issue. It
Right.
was some of my patients, they look to me more like they have anxiety.
Yeah.
And they would have oxygen, they would be on oxygen, they would be more like anxious. They're scared, Of course, if you tell somebody who has no knowledge, you're gonna die, of course you're gonna be scared. And you don't know why even. They were on oxygen. I never forget the night. One night I was working and I had these two patients, and both were on oxygens. Both were watching TV all night long. Of course, they were telling them what I just mentioned. And every 5 minutes, they would be calling me to come to the room, and they would be taking the oxygen, cannula off. They were scared. And all my coworkers were telling me, please do not go to that room no more. You're going to infect us all. We all going to die. So what I did next day, I come, I said, I cannot have all this. This is too much. So I told my patients, do not take this off, because if I am away, I cannot come here immediately. I won't be able to help you. They would not take the mask off. They would not take the cannula off. And my coworkers could not understand, because they said, oh my God, your patients are so good today. Last night, they called you to room about 30 times and they are so good tonight. I didn't tell them what I have told to my patients. I scared them.
Well, that's a good thing that you did there.
And it worked
From
because,
the death protocol.
yeah, it worked. They lied to them. They lied to patients on TV. If you watch the TV, this is not good also for the patients to watch the TV and they are scaring them all night long, 24 hours. If you have sniffles, if you have, runny nose or whatever, you're going to die.
Yeah, a
That's why.
question that I've asked on this program before in terms of the general psychosomatic effect is if you announce to a nation like the United States, a nation of 330 million people approximately, on national television, on all the major networks, all at once, there's a deadly virus circulating in the air. How many people on the spot grab their throats and say, I'm sick?
Yeah, exactly. That's what was happening with my two patients. And next day I came, I told them, guys, don't pull those cannulas, because if I cannot make it here on time, it might not end up good. they were so good that night. I
Called
went
scared straight.
they were scared. Yeah, because I told them true. I might not come on time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you, Helena. We're pretty much out of time here. I want to thank you for your courage and thank you for joining me today. And I hope that we can support you in your ongoing effort for justice, which I hope you receive some form of justice for the atrocity of what you've experienced. And
I'm sorry, we all need to fight this organ harvesting. We really do. Because when you look how many children we are losing, those 325,000 children, what they lost last administration, they are somewhere utilized for many of these things.
yeah, it's a nightmare on
It's
planet
a
Earth.
nightmare. Yeah.
It's a type of thing that we're not discussing, and it's right there as a fundamental human rights issue and an issue of our times, basically. So in addition to all that we've been made aware of over the past few years, we need to add this issue of organ harvesting on the list. It's an incredible crime that's being committed in hospitals. There's no
You,
such thing as brain death. And please listen to my interview with Dr. Paul Byrne, Bassline episode number 29. He's a foremost authority on this, and he explains very clearly that brain death is a hoax, it's a myth, it's a fallacy, it's what's used as the justification for what should be illegal organ harvesting, which is happening under so-called legal falsehoods, or it's being guided by on a false premise that these horrific actions are being carried out against people. So everyone, let's be aware of that. We're going to have another Stop the Shots session tonight and tomorrow night and every night, so please join us on Stop the Shots, the Stop the Shots community on X. We had the legendary Dr. Judy Mikovits joining us last night, Dr. Leonard Horowitz last week, and other guests of this program will be joining us on the Stop the Shots nightly space, where you can communicate with some of these heroic and insightful people. And of course, please again check out my Substack. Save that date, April 27th, the 528 Frequency Jam in Harlem. If you're not in Harlem, if you could help us spread the word about it, if you know people in New York and you could direct them to our event on April 27th, that would be an incredible thing, because we're really trying to build up this community music cipher again. As New York has become increasingly corporate, we want to get back to just people being able to get together and have a good old time in the old fashioned sense of people enjoying music and enjoying each other's company. But again, thank you, Helena. Thank you, listeners out there who have been tuning into this program on a regular basis. I really appreciate all your support. Please seek out the Stop the Shots community on X. Please check out my latest article on Substack, which is actually called Stop the Shots, and it's an invitation to our Stop the Shots community. So please check out that article and share it, because it's an invitation to our growing group, which just broke the threshold of 4,000 members. Please jump in there and help us reach 5,000 and beyond. So once again, have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Everybody stay strong, stay vigilant, and until next time, stop the shots.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Helena.
Bye.
So many people think it feels like my love is flowing in a barren land in the way they say, yeah. 'Cause love's in an hourglass, running out of the time, yeah. It's all those bombs, the lessons still unlearned, and the time keeps moving on. It feels like my love is flowing in a barren land in the wasteland. 'Cause love's in an hourglass, running out of a time, yeah. Feels like love's in an hourglass. 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 of sadness.